everybody, welcome to another video. This one's just a quick one on my setup as far as airline goes and the filters I use, because it's probably the most common question I get asked by people is what setup have I got and what do I use in my sort of environment. So I'll run through what I've got set up in a minute. We'll turn the camera around and we'll go around and run through that setup. But what I wanted to just quickly do is there's a few things that you need to look out for that I've found anyway, is that you get different connectors. You get the British type, the European type, and the US type. Now, of the three, the two to have are the European or the US, because you'll see the size of the holes, these two here. And then you see the size of the British one. It's much smaller. So if you've got a gun that consumes quite a lot of air, even if you've got enough air to power that gun, it's not going to go through the tubes quick enough, because this will create the bottleneck. Even if you've got like 10mm hose, it's still, this is going to be the bottleneck. So make sure you use either European or US fittings. The US one looks slightly bigger, but it does actually taper down slightly, so the actual sizes are about the same. They're about, well, I wrote it down here, they're about 6.5mm compared to 4.7mm, so quite a lot of difference, about what, 40%, 45%. The other thing is filters. Now I'll show you my setup as I say in a minute, but I've got a spare set here because this is the set I use if I'm using an air-fed mask, which you should do most of the time, but I don't always use one, I must confess, but you should do. But if I'm doing something where I need a lot of air for you know, a lot of time in the workshop, then I use a separate setup, and I keep the compressor outside the building. So, because I've got a few compressors, but one of the compressors I leave outside the building, and then I just run a hose through to this, and then that supplies my my breathing set. And then I've got a separate supply for the spray gun set. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to send your air from a compressor that's inside the building you're spraying. I mean, in an ideal world, you shouldn't have the compressor in the same building anyway, simply for the spark. You could get sparks, but I've never had a problem at all, ever. But you know, I'm just telling you what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have it outside the building anyway. But if it's not ideal conditions and you're like me, then you'll have it inside, but you shouldn't have breathing air coming from a compressor that's inside your environment that you're spraying, because all you're doing is taking the toxins. And although this will separate some, we'll go through this in a second, it'll separate some, it doesn't separate the harmful parts of the paint, and particularly the clear coat. So what we got here is we got a setup, and I've got a carbon copy of it, and I'll show you it in a second as well. But this is basically a 3-stage filter set, and all it is you've got the first filter, which filters down to a certain size, you know, over 0.1 of a micron or something, and then you have the second filter, which is under a micron, and it will filter the oil, because you get oil in a compressor as well, because most compressors are oil compressors. You get the oil and the water, which is from the condensation of the water. Where the water is compressed, you get water, basically condensation. So that's what these are designed to take. So your first one takes the bigger particles, second one takes the smaller particles, and then the last one is normally a breathing set. So it just takes out the final particles and the bad particles that are there for breathing. So it allows you to have compressed air coming in here from a compressor and breathing quality air out of there, although you should get the air checked every now and again for breathing quality. But that's the idea of it, and that's why this is pristine, because it just goes outside. It isn't in a spraying environment, and I don't use it that often, but that's basically what it's for. Now we're going to pop the camera around and I'll show you my setup, and I'll just run through a few things. But as I say, it's the most common question asked, so I thought I'd do a video and then I can point people to the video. All right guys, I'll see you. So this is my setup. This is a 90-litre belt drive compressor. See the belt drive there. So I've got a 90-litre belt drive here, and I've got a 50-litre direct drive which it's linked to here. Now normally I leave the direct drive off and just use this, and then that fills both of them up. So it's 140 litres in total, which is about 35 US gallons, and it seems to work really well for me. It's, you know, for what I do, it's absolutely fine. It keeps up with most things that I do. And I have got, as I say, another compressor which is actually in a different building. I just run a line through to another set of filters if I need a mask. So that's my basic setup here. I'll put a link in the description of linking the two compressors up so that I don't have to run into it now. But obviously when you get in here, you get moisture build up. Where the air is compressed, you get moisture build up, and you also get what I was saying before about the oil. This is where the oil's kept to lubricate the pump. You've got two pistons at the top here and a crankshaft, etc. at the bottom, and obviously this needs to be lubricated to stop it seizing up. And what happens is some oil goes past these rings and it inevitably ends up in the tank. So what you've got coming out here is actually, air with a bit of oil and water in it. Now, filters are no good here. It's no good putting a filter right next to your compressor, because the moisture is still vaporized, so it will go through it. You need it to turn to moisture, and to do that, what I do is I have a 15 meter length of hose, which is about 50 foot, and that runs around about 3 or 4 times around the back of the garage, goes through there and comes out here, and this comes to your filter set. Now what I have is I have 2 cheap sacrificial filters before the main set, which is a carbon copy, although dirtier, of the set I showed you at the start. And what you need to know is that by far the best way to get good air is a dryer, what they call a dryer, which is effectively a refrigeration unit on top of a compressor. And when the air comes out, it freezes the air, which removes the makes the air cold, which removes the moisture from the air, and then you get really dry air. But they're quite expensive and they're quite big as well. So I haven't got that. But this is the idea of this is like for people at home that are just starting out to see what I've got really. And as I say, after 15 meters, the moisture in the air starts to become liquid rather than being vaporized, and then you get to here. Now this is just a cheap inline filter, and the reason for that is it's just a sacrificial filter really, because they're cheap to replace, cheap and easy to replace. So I just put that there, and this is all with the idea of saving the main filters, which it does admirably. So that's my first one, and then I've just got another cheap one, which you'll see gets a little bit of moisture in it at the bottom. I'll leave that set at full bore, so about 110, 120 psi, depending what the compressors are set to. And then that eventually goes into your 3 filter set. So when it comes out of here, the air is actually good quality. And what I would say to you is, if you've got a budget of, I don't know, say you've got £300, then spend £100 on the gun and £200 on the filters. This set is £200. Spend £200 on the filter. Don't spend £280 on the gun and £20 on the filter, because it'll be a total waste of money, because you can have the best gun in the world, but if you've got rubbish air going to it, it's a total waste of time. So get yourself good quality air and you'll get really good results with a cheap gun, and that's half the knack of getting good results with your paintwork is the quality of the air coming in, without a shadow of a doubt. So try and spend as much as you can on the filters. You can get set similar to these about £150 in the UK, and I'm sure, you know, likewise in the US, Australia, Canada, where, you know, everybody, Europe, where everybody watches these videos, you'll have a similar setup. This company, Metalworks, actually make them for DeVilbiss, and the DeVilbiss version of these, which is exactly the same except DeVilbiss written on it, are £350. So you can see it's worth shopping around to get a good deal. But you can also see that the filters here, where are we? There. Are literally, it's so clean. I do take the balls off every now and again and clean them, but you'll see the filters are really, really clean. And the reason for that is just these ones here. These take most of the rubbish out before it gets there, and it just allows you, replacement filters about £150 for these, for the 3 different filters. So it's worth having something that protects them, and it's just, you know, a line of defense before the main filter set. And I get no problems with air quality whatsoever, so it certainly works for me. Anyway, I hope it's answered some questions, and I'll be able to point people to the video now. Cheers guys, thanks for watching, bye bye.